Jet. This is the most iconic chem in the Fallout universe, and its story is genuinely more interesting than most people realize. You see, Jet is a powerful stimulant that floods the body with endorphins, creating intense cravings for the chem. It hits the central nervous system hard and warps the perception of time, so that a few minutes can feel like much longer than they actually are. Though knowing what's actually inside that inhaler might take the edge off the appeal, the chem is actually synthesized from Brahmin dung. You see, before the war, meat companies were looking for ways to increase their profit margins, so they started experimenting with cheap protein extracts, additives they could mix directly into their meat products to bulk them up without using more actual meat. But what they didn't realize was that the slightest contamination in the extract was turning it into a potent stimulant, meaning anyone who ate the meat was essentially getting dosed without knowing it. Rather than scrap the entire program, they redirected the remaining extract and fed it straight to their cattle herds to recoup the losses. But the cattle didn't flush it out. They metabolized it, absorbed it into their bodies, and when they mutated into Brahmin after the bombs fell, the compound had become embedded into their biology, including the dung. The active compound was being expelled through Brahmin waste in high enough concentrations to get someone high just from the fumes, and that's what Jet is made from. The man who figured this out was a young chemist named Myron, working for the Mordino crime family in New Reno. He was ordered by Big Jesus Mordino to develop something that would give the family control over the mining town of Redding, and Jet was his answer. The eureka moment came when he noticed the slaves tending the Brahmin fertilizer were getting high purely from the fumes. After a round of testing that did not go well for the subjects, we're talking heart attacks, cerebral hemorrhages, psychotic episodes, the first version of Jet was ready for deployment. Myron's formula was particularly dangerous because he engineered it to resist standard treatments. The only counter was an endorphin blocker, which the Chosen One eventually helped develop in Fallout 2. By January 2241, the first batches had already reached Redding, and the effect that followed did exactly what Mordino wanted. Ironically, Myron himself didn't survive long enough to see any of it matter because he got wrecked by a user at a bar in the Den, only less than a year after the fall of the Enclave. After his death, production continued and spread east. Psycho. Most chems in Fallout have pretty shady origins, but Psycho is different because this one came straight from the United States government. Specifically, it was created by a private research company called Chase R&D, founded by General Constantine Chase. The company worked directly for the US Army, and when the Anchorage reclamation was reaching its final stages, Chase and his physician, Adrian Adami, authorized Psycho for combat use, even though clinical trials were still incomplete. The chem is delivered through a unique injection system that mixes its chemicals right before use, and the goal here was pretty straightforward: keep more soldiers alive on the Alaskan front by making them physically harder to kill. It succeeded at that. But what it also did was hook people in and increase the risk of them having serious problems down the line, like dementia, psychosis, constant aggression, and for anyone with a weak heart, it can straight up kill them. And you can see this clearly with Kate in Fallout 4. She's apparently been using the chem since she left home, and she's been hiding it the entire time, sneaking doses when she thinks you're not looking. By the time she finally admits it, she's already spitting blood and can feel that something's wrong inside her. The Psycho has been causing internal damage that can't be healed through standard wasteland medicine. Her only option is Vault 95, a facility that Vault Tech used for addiction experiments. They had some kind of specialized machine designed to clean people up, something the rest of the wasteland just doesn't have access to. Without it, she knows she's going to die. In the real world, Psycho draws most of its similarities from hard stimulants. Buffout. Unlike most chems with their post-apocalyptic horror stories, Buffout was right there on pharmacy shelves before the bombs even fell. And what it does, it's pretty straightforward. It amps up your strength, endurance, and max health right away, which turns you into a powerhouse for a short period of time. This is why athletes loved this, and even some US military folks who used it on the down low, though it was never officially cleared for combat, unlike Psycho. Like most chems, it's hard to put down once you're hooked. You see, when Buffout wears off, it doesn't just return you to your baseline condition, it actually drops you below it. So the same strength and endurance it boosted comes crashing back down, and that health loss makes the cravings all the more dangerous. Another hit is suddenly the only way to feel functional again. It can also make someone delusional about their own strength. One chem diary from Good Neighbor tells a hilarious cautionary tale. A guy tests it by punching through one board, easy, then 10 boards, he feels invincible, then steel ones, and well, he ends up typing with his left hand after breaking the other, needing Stimpaks to fix it. But what's interesting is that despite the risks, Buffout has real medical value in the wasteland. It can literally pull someone back from the brink of severe dehydration or heat stroke, stabilizing them when nothing else will. In Fallout 3, a little lamplighter named Lucy even extracts it to treat rickets in the kids. But in the real world, Buffouts are likely a form of performance-enhancing medicine. Mentats. This chem is what you call a nootropic, where the active ingredient boosts memory function and speeds up mental processing. This gives the users a short window of heightened intelligence and perception before the effect fades and leaves them tired and unfocused. Before the war, they were manufactured by medtech laboratories in chalky red tablets, sold as a creativity chem, and popular with students, intellectuals, and anyone in a field that demanded sustained mental output. but MedTech wasn't operating out of any particular goodwill. The company deliberately designed Mentats to be incredibly difficult to quit, and then handed out free samples in targeted areas including school districts. To make them appealing to younger users, MedTech developed fruit-flavored variants and offered them as prizes at the National Archives for completing basic history quizzes. It's one of the more quietly sinister pieces of pre-war corporate behavior in the entire series, and it barely gets mentioned. In gameplay terms, the base version of Mentats raises intelligence and perception. The flavored variants split those effects. Orange Mentats focus entirely on perception, Berry Mentats on intelligence, and Grape Mentats on charisma, reformulated to reduce social anxiety and sharpen awareness of body language and social cues. One detail in the lore worth mentioning is that in a developing adolescent mind, Mentats appear to cause a permanent intelligence increase. The chem interacts differently with a brain that's still forming. On the flip side, prolonged excessive use can cause recurring migraines, and in extreme cases, as seen with Dr. Mobius in Old World Blues, a combination of Mentats and psychoabuse can produce acute dementia. The name itself is a direct reference to Frank Herbert's Dune, where Mentats are humans trained for computer-like mathematical and logical computation. Given what the chem does, it's a fitting nod. The real-world equivalent is, well, nootropics and cognitive enhancers, the kind of thing students reach for during exam season, which tracks almost exactly with how MedTech was positioning them before the bombs fell. Med-X. Med-X is the wasteland's answer to pain management, an injectable chem that significantly boosts damage resistance and makes the body far more capable of absorbing punishment in the short term. In Fallout 4, a single dose raises damage resistance by 25 points and poison resistance by 250, with a 25% chance of building dependency with repeated use. The chem was around before the war and had a recognized presence in the US Army, referenced by name in projects like the Stealth Suit Mark II and the Medic Power Armor Initiative, so whatever it was taken seriously at the military level. But the more interesting story around Med-X isn't really in the lore at all. It's what the chem was called before it shipped. You see, in the game, the original name was morphine, so when Bethesda submitted Fallout 3 for classification in Australia, the Australian Office of Film and Literature Classification refused to assign the game a rating specifically because of how the medicine was depicted. A real-world substance used as a power-up in a video game was apparently a line they weren't willing to cross. Without a classification, the game effectively couldn't be sold or distributed in the country at all. Naturally, this sent many Australian fans into a frenzy. Bethesda's response was to rename the chem across every version of the game, not just the Australian copy, but every release worldwide. Eventually, the ban was lifted. Morphine became Med-X, and it has stayed that way ever since. Stimpak. The Stimpak is the most dependable item in the wasteland, and it has been since Fallout 1. No matter the trouble you walked into, use it, and your body starts putting itself back together. Short for Stimulation Delivery Package, it's a syringe loaded with healing compounds that kick your body's own recovery mechanism into full gear, closing whatever life-threatening open wounds you have almost instantly. These things were remnants of pre-war technology, originally designed to support recovery after autodoc surgery, not for patching up gunshot wounds in abandoned metro stations. But the wasteland has a way of repurposing things. Stimpaks are so useful, they're effective enough that they work on dogs, something that visibly surprised Piper Wright in Fallout 4. Now, the basic Stimpak will get you far, but the upgraded Super Stimpak carries even stronger healing compounds that deliver a significantly bigger effect. However, the catch is, it causes minor trauma to the tissue it just repaired, which deals a small amount of damage back to the user after the healing wears off. But don't worry, that's about it. You can't get hooked with Stimpaks, it's completely safe. Now, there's an even more advanced version of Stimpaks called the auto-inject variant. In Lonesome Road, this monitors the player's vital signs and administers itself automatically when health drops below a critical threshold. Curie in Fallout 4 developed her own improved formula using a genetically cultivated strain of mutfruit, which she was genuinely thrilled about, but was unfortunately cut from the game. The real-world parallel of Stimpaks is probably not invented yet. It's essentially a sci-fi interpretation of how healing potions should work, but the closest would be stem cell injections if they're portable and fast-acting. Rad-X. Rad-X is a preventive radiation chem. You take it before you walk into a radioactive area, and it substantially raises your body's natural resistance for the duration. Unlike most of what's in your inventory, Rad-X carries no risk of getting hooked on it and no known side effects, making it one of the cleanest options in the game. That combination of reliability and zero downside made it a staple long before the bombs ever dropped. In fact, a pre-war advertisement claims it's by 9 out of 10 doctors as a daily supplement for Americans with a frailer constitution. It didn't lose that reputation after the war either, and its uses turned out to stretch well beyond simply surviving hot zones. Rad-X can temporarily suppress active mutations and filter irradiated supplies to make them safe for use, and even decontaminate water sources. For the most dangerous environments in the series, places like the Glow in Fallout 1, one of the most irradiated locations across all the games, Rad-X is described as the difference between surviving the trip and not making it back at all. Settlements like Vault City manufactured it in large quantities because demand never let up, and it held its value as a trade good well into the 23rd century as a result. The real-world equivalent is potassium iodide, radiation protective tablets distributed near nuclear facilities taken before exposure to limit how much radioactive material the body absorbs. Same principle, roughly the same intended use. Fallout just made it a daily vitamin. Radaway. Where Rad-X stops radiation from getting in, Radaway pulls it back out. It's a chemical solution that bonds with radioactive particles already in the body and carries them out of the system over time, delivered through an IV bag. The process isn't instant though, and not at all pleasant. You see, Radaway is a powerful diuretic. The radiation gets expelled through urination, and the side effects while that's happening include nausea, stomach pain, diarrhea, and headaches. This makes the people who've taken it remember the feeling, like Henry Kasdan in Fallout 3, who described it as something like a rampaging Brahmin. With that said, when the alternative is horrible radiation sickness, most people would take the proverbial Brahmin. However, one limitation that sometimes gets overlooked is that Radaway treats the radiation already present in the body, but it does nothing for the internal damage that radiation has already caused. If the organs have taken a hit, the chem can stop the accumulation, but it can't undo what's already done. Additionally, in Fallout 1, 2, and Tactics, you could actually get hooked to Radaway, but they quietly removed that risk by Fallout 3. Now, it's pretty hard to find a real-world equivalent of Radaway because radiation treatment involves a bunch of targeted therapies. One example is Prussian blue, an FDA-approved oral antidote that binds radioactive cesium in the gut for later bathroom excretion. But Radaway's mechanism is closer to chelation therapy with DTPA, an IV process using bonding agents to pull radioactive heavy metals and particles out through the kidneys. It just takes longer and has a cleaner-looking IV bag. And that's Fallout's most iconic chems explained. Now be honest, you're not actually taking a hit of Brahmin dung, right? Thanks for watching, guys.